Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my most anticipated books of 2025. These are 8 of the books I'm most excited to read of my 30 book TBR. I've already read one of these books, but I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts on it are just yet because I'm going to do a wrap up at the end of the month. I'm going to tell you guys my thoughts on all of my January books then. I know what most of these are about, but there are a few at the end that I'm going to talk about that I don't know as much about, and I want to leave it that way because I feel like going into it blind will make it even better, and I already think that I'm going to enjoy them from what I know of them so far. But for the most part, I will tell you guys what these books are about and why I'm so excited to read them. Before I start, I want to say please make sure to like and subscribe. I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm hoping to hit 1,000 subscribers by the summer. I'm going to be doing all sorts of reading and writing videos, a few vlogs here and there, and video essays once I get more time. The first book on this list is Franny and Zooie by J.D. Salinger, and as you can tell, this is the book that I read. I actually just finished it 2 days ago. Again, I'm not going to tell you guys what my thoughts on it are, but I was very excited to read this. Franny and Zooie is about 2 siblings, the youngest of the Glass family, Franny and Zooie, and they're both dealing with their older brother Seymour's loss. We can see how they're dealing with it quite differently, but both of them do relate in that they were often paired together by their siblings and their parents, and they both feel quite different, not only from their families, but from the rest of the world and even themselves. The book is split into 2 sections. The first is Franny and the second is Zooie, but Franny does appear in Zoovie's section, which is the longer one. This basically just follows some of their conversations with other people, with each other, with their mom, for Franny's case with her boyfriend or the boy that she's seeing. I was really excited to read this for numerous reasons. First of all, I have read The Catcher in the Rye. That's the only other Salinger book I've read, and I really enjoyed it. A big part of why I love The Catcher in the Rye was Salinger's writing and the way he presents certain ideas that felt very effortless. And so I knew that I would like a lot of his other books. I had also heard other people that have very similar tastes to mine really like Franny and Zooie, and it is quite a short book. It's about 150 pages, and I've been enjoying shorter classics a lot more recently. The next book on this list is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This is a very sick and twisted book. I'm sure you've heard of it. It is about a man named Humbert. He's a professor and he falls in love with a 12-year-old girl that he's tutoring. Now, this book I've been putting off because I want to feel prepared when I'm going into it. I want to have learned enough about Nabokov's intentions and what this book was meant to be before I go into it with the wrong impression, because I know a lot of people don't like Nabokov for writing this book or misinterpret what it's meant to show and represent. I plan to read a lot as I'm reading it and after reading it so I can grasp completely what Nabokov was trying to say. He's written a few articles, I think, on it and done a lot of interviews. It's a very different kind of book. I've also really been enjoying books that explore psychology along with the story, and this one obviously does. One thing I've heard about it is the reader kind of becomes complacent in Nabokov's intention because you kind of feel like you're feeling bad for Humbert because you are following his narration. So I'm very interested to see how that will play out and how I'm going to feel as I'm reading it. Also, from the quotes I've read by Nabokov, he's a very good writer. This copy I don't really like. I like that it's very small. I really like the size, but obviously Nabokov did not want any girls on the cover of his books, and it looks quite childish, which is obviously purposeful, but it just adds to the unease. Next is Foe by J.M. Coetzee. This is a very interesting book. I have never heard anyone talking about it, and I'm really interested because the premise and the actual story sounds very interesting. Again, there are some psychological aspects in here, and I believe that there is a reference to this book in A Series of Unfortunate Events, which is my all-time favorite book series. I'm going to read the back for you guys. In the early 18th century, Susan Barton is washed ashore on a remote desert island. There she encounters a man named Crusoe and his silent servant Friday. Far away from civilization, she has no choice but to join these castaways until the day a passing ship offers a chance of rescue. On arriving in London, Susan decides to tell her story and seeks help from the well-known author Daniel Foe. But as a writer, Foe seeks not to tell the truth as Susan remembers it, but instead to produce a grand narrative that will outlive its age, one Susan cannot recognize. I find this premise very interesting, and I love that there were already things for me to analyze before actually reading the book. Obviously, the author's name in the book is Daniel Foe. The title of the book is Foe. Foe obviously means enemy, but I thought it was very interesting that his name was the title of the book of Susan's story, which is kind of what we can imagine happens in the book, which is that he overtakes her story to make it sensationalized. And like I said, I believe there is a literary reference in a series of unfortunate events to this book, because in the end, the 13th book, the Baudelaires wash ashore on an island and there is a servant named Friday. Very excited to read this, and this is one of the books that I am saving until the summer holiday, where I'm gonna have complete free time, and I want to be really focused when I'm reading this. Next on this list is The Room by Hubert Selby Jr. This is a book that I picked up from a secondhand bookstore in Edinburgh, the Armchair Books. So The Room is about a man who is in jail and prison, and we're kind of just following his thoughts and the way he reflects back on his memories, the way he thinks about his guards and the people who have placed him here. I flicked through the pages a while back and I saw that some of the chapters start off with like a list through numbers, and that really captivated me because it shows how deep into his mind we're really going to get. Again, I've been enjoying psychological books and I think this is going to be a very good one. Next on this list, and this is the only non-classic actually here, but Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I'm really upset that I didn't wait until the paperbacks came out, but it is a pretty hardback. I'm glad that there's actually a cover design because I hate hardbacks that have no design under the dust cover. It is very pretty. So Sunrise on the Reaping is following Hamish Abernathy during his games, and his games were the 50th year, which was the second quarter quell, and this was the year when there were twice as many players in the game. I was and am very, very excited to read this because Hamish was my favorite character from the original series. I thought he was very complex and I loved the figure that he represented for Katniss. I was so excited when it was revealed that this book was actually going to be about Hamish's games, because I, like many others, when I found out that there was going to be another Hunger Games book set the 50th year, I didn't think that it would actually be following Hamish during his games. I thought it would be something like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where there's a small section about the games but the majority of the book is something else. It might in fact be that, but I believe that it is going to be very heavily focused on the games. Again, this is a book that I'm saving for the summer. I think it's going to be one of my new favorites and I'm so excited. Also, small note, very random, unrelated to all of this, but I am going to be doing a video essay not only on Hamish but on Gale, because that is a character that I have a very unconventional view of in the original series. A lot of people hate Gale, and I definitely don't ship him with Katniss. I 100% ship Peeta and Katniss. I don't think he would have done well with Katniss, and I didn't like the way that he handled some of their situations. However, I think he's a very accurate, brutal, and real representation of what war can do to some people, and I think that it's almost an insult to Suzanne Collins to kind of brush him off as just a completely evil character, because he is very complex and I really want to explore him in more depth. Just wanted to throw that out there because I get frustrated every time I'm talking about the Hunger Games and people simplify the characters so much. There's also an issue I find with Harry Potter, like with characters like Snape, Dumbledore, they're just really simplified to black and white opinions. Anyway, next we have 3 books that I don't know as much about, but I'm very excited for, and they are very popular novels, so you will likely know what they're about. And the first is 1984 by George Orwell. This is the coolest copy, first of all. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited to read this. It's amazing. I love it. Well, it was futuristic at the time when Orwell was writing it, about a world where everything is being supervised and surveilled. I'm really excited to read this, obviously not only because it's so popular and I think very relevant for today, but also because I've read Animal Farm and I really liked it. It was one of my favorite classics from 2024. I loved the ending and I loved how creepily and realistically he wrote the concept. Next, we have Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. I know very little about this. I know it follows Jane and I think it is a dark romance story. This is one of the early dark romances. I've had this book on my bookshelf for an embarrassingly long time, not just because of its length, but because I've been told by so many people that it is a wintry book, and every time winter season comes up, I don't know why I just never pick it up, but I'm really hopeful that I'm going to read this in 2025. Everything I've heard about it I love, and I think I'm really going to enjoy it. And the final book on this list, the last book that I am most excited to read in 2025, is Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I know practically nothing about this, and when my sister gave it to me, she said, don't read anything about it, go into it blind. I haven't read anything by Donna Tartt, but I have loved every single quote I've read online by her. I've also seen some of her interviews, which I really enjoyed as a writer. I believe it does include something about a portrait and a boy without a mom. I think I'm really gonna like this, and I'm really excited to finally read Donna Tartt. That is it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe, and you'll see all of my opinions on these books as I read them throughout the year. If you've read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts without spoilers. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys next week.